Hey friends, welcome back to another pottery template. Today we are going to be making this very cool citrus press or lemon squeezer or whatever you want to call it, something that squeezes your citrus. So first thing you need to do is tape together the two parts of K17. This piece was just too long to include on a normal sheet of paper, so I just put it into parts and just use some tape to tape it together. Then, of course, we need to roll out some clay. So I'm going to be using about 1 kilo of clay here that I'm rolling out. However, please note that I'm not actually using all of that in this project. It's just the amount that you want to grab from your clay to roll out a slab. So you're going to be able to reuse at least half of this. Now I'm going to be using stoneware for this project, but of course you can use any clay you like. Just please make sure that it is a food-safe clay, so air-dry clay or polymer clay is not going to work for this project. So I'm rolling out a 1/2 centimeter here, and you're going to want to make it a little bit on the long side, like long and narrow, like you can see I'm doing here, so it can fit this long K17 piece. But of course, if you need to roll it out in pieces, that's also perfectly fine. So then you just want to cut out one of each template. Now, as usual, I like to let my template cutouts dry a little bit in front of the fan before I start working with them. I usually let them dry here for 5 to 10 minutes. This makes them a little bit more firm, which I find easier to work this. So I'm going to start with the cone piece, and here you want to cut both of the flat ends at a 45-degree angle. So make sure you're flipping it halfway in between so that the two angles are able to overlap. And you want to, of course, score the pieces that you're going to attach and use slip if necessary. My clay was wet enough so that I didn't need to use slip here, but that does depend on your clay. So just overlap them and try and smoothen that seam as best you can. I was having a little hard time showing you guys this holding my hands in the right way, but hopefully you get the picture. And then make sure also you want to smooth out the inside too, because this part is going to be exposed as well. Okay, now we can set that aside for now, and we're going to work on the rim. So that's the long, thin piece. And once again, cut at a 45-degree angle and score each side so that they are able to overlap and create a nice invisible seam. Just go ahead and blend. Okay, now we are going to attach the rim here to the base. Now you'll notice with this template, like all of my templates, the base is a little bit bigger than it needs to be. That is because the easiest way to get the nicest connection is to attach first and then trim to size. So you want to mark with your needle tool where you're going to attach it, score those lines, and then just attach it. Be careful to use light but even pressure here to not buckle the walls. And then I like to go back in with some water on a paintbrush to smooth out any extra scoring lines. Once it's well attached, that's when I will cut off the extra and blend the base up into the walls. I'm not too worried about making it perfect just now because I know I'm going to go back in later and smooth everything out. Now we want to add our cone, so you want to try and center it as much as possible. And once again, you're going to just draw around it with your needle tool to mark where it's attaching. And then, use your scoring tool to score both sides. Do use slip if your clay wants you to use slip. And then just give it some nice, soft, light but firm pressure. And try and get your finger in there and blend that seam out. We want as few cracks as possible to make this food safe. Okay, and then if you want to, you can add a spout here now. I recommend you do this now and not later in the build because right now the clay is very wet and easy to manipulate. Later on, you might risk a crack here if you try and do what I'm doing here. And then for a citrus press, I don't like the cone to be very sharp. So what I like to do is use a rib to kind of pat down that cone a little bit and round it out a little bit more. And this is going to make it more of a soft curve instead of a sharp edge. It just works out better that way. I also made another piece that doesn't have a spout, and later I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. So now you want to let them dry out a little bit. So what I like to do is put some cloth over them and let them dry out overnight. This way, they're going to be leather hard the next time I get to them. But drying times depends on your region, the weather and the state of your studio. So now I'll go back in and really clean up that edge there. So if it's dry enough, you can use the rib like I'm using here to kind of shave off the extra clay. Otherwise, just do what you normally do, blending it in with your finger. So once that's nice, I'm going to actually carve out the bottom because you'll notice there's actually some trapped air in here, which is not what we want. We want all of our pieces to be accessible, especially since this is going to be used for food. We want to make sure that everything can get cleaned very easily. So I just cut out the bottom and I'm going to smooth out that seam. Next, it's time to carve the grooves. So for that, I'm using a little loop tool, and you can carve the grooves out any pattern you like. I chose to do 4 around each side and then like lower grooves later on. I think that you can see what I mean better than I can explain it. But you do want to cut some nice grooves in here because that's what's going to catch the juice out of the citrus. So now that piece is done, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do on this other one that doesn't have a spout. So this is a little experiment of mine, and I'm going to let you know at the end how it turns out. But I wanted something to capture the seeds in the citrus. So I'm using a 1/2 centimeter drill bit to basically make a little sieve on the side of my citrus press. And I'm hoping that that's going to catch all the seeds and all the pulp and just let out the juice. But we're going to test it at the end and see how it goes. Okay, and then you just need to let them dry out. So once they're bone dry, I'm going to pop them into the bisque kiln. And here I'm glazing my citrus press. Make sure you remove the glaze from the bottom and then back into the kiln for the final fire. And here is our final results. So this is the press that has the built-in sieve. And I just think that this is such a cool shape, a cool form. It's such a kitchen essential. It's just so practical. I don't know about you guys, but I use a lot of lemons in my cooking. And I just think that this is going to make the whole process a lot easier. I used to squeeze them by hand and then run it through a sieve. And I've been using this press the last few weeks, and it works really well. So yeah, let's test out the sieve. Ta-da! One thing I learned, I might actually remake this because the holes should be a little bit higher than I made them. Like if you're squeezing a particularly juicy lemon, sometimes the holes have been too low and then the juice just spills out onto my counter. So if you're gonna make this, definitely put the holes a little bit higher than I did. But of course, the standard, I think this is how most citrus presses are designed, the standard lip works just fine. And then if you don't have any seeds, or if you don't mind seeds, you can just pour it right in, or you can use a sieve to sieve out the pulp. And that's all. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. You can find the templates down below, and I've got loads more templates on my channel, so definitely check those out, and I'll see you guys next month with the next template. Bye, friends.